My name is Jerry Fialka. Today is Feb 9, 2022. We want to thank the great Rob Grant for hosting us on his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. I sure hope Rob is one of those 10 people who are tuning in right now in the green room and sending us their professional hecklers, but we're going to ignore them. Sorry. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Howard R. Engel. Is that the correct way to pronounce it, Howard?
Yes, it is. Yes, in English.
And where are you calling in from?
Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
And I'm really honored because you're the founding director of the Mcluhan Initiative in Winnipeg. And hooray and hurrah for that. I love that. What's the best thing for a human being?
The best thing for a human being. Wow. Loving, laughing, and living.
Dude, how'd you know that? I have a question that says, tell me your philosophy of life in 3 words, all beginning with the same letter.
Done.
That's pretty loving, laughing, and what was the third
Living.
one? Living. Yeah. I say learning, but that's pretty dang good. What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Face to face, believe it or not. Not mediated.
Yeah.
No offense, by the way.
Hey, no offense. Well, this is pretty face to face, dude.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
And we call that direct experience. And indeed, Marshall would have creamed his jeans with this. This is live TV.
Yes.
Can you believe that? We're on live TV.
Yeah, incredible.
In the 50s in New York, they had these big clunky cameras in theater, in lighting, and in CBS studios, and Elia Kazan, and I mean we've got it down to a science. It's amazing.
Yeah, just ask Milton Berle that time he cut his leg during a show.
Did he really? Oh,
yeah. And the show went on.
And the show went
live
on.
Live TV.
Exactly. So, Howard, why do you think humans collect or gather information?
To better love, live, and learn. There you go.
Yeah. Is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
I think it's part of our survival. So I would say it's more innate. I think we need it. We need it to survive,
Yeah. No, I get that. That word survival often comes up with that question. Do thoughts create emotions?
Yeah. Depending what you're thinking about, of course, I would say, yeah. Sure.
Is thinking more innate or more invented?
No, again, that's something we learn it. We learn from our parents and from those around us. But I think it's something that is there. Like it's that we have the capacity for it. I don't see it. I mean, the invention part comes in the mediation, eh?
Yeah.
It's facilitated by mediation, but I would say it's there to start with.
Fill in the blank, Howard. I don't know what I think until I
talk to myself and talk to others.
Oh, that is good. Marshall, pretty close. Marshall says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion said, I don't know what I think until I write it. But I like that you bringing in others, not just you have to say it out loud to yourself and to others. That's good.
Yeah. And writing it down. Yeah, definitely. I think something in a way, I used to be a journal keeper. And I guess I do that now through my emailing. we were talking about earlier, as which I feel is an art form. It's a new form of letter writing for me. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't. I eschew the abbreviations and the. I do a long form. I learned grammar from from my Jesuit education, and I employ it in my writing, in my emails, and so on. And to me, it's a way of exercising of giving form to thoughts. And to me, the thoughts in a way don't really exist until they're shared in some way. And to me, by writing it down, you've actually created what I think Mcluhan would call like an artifact,
Yeah.
because the written word in that form has become suddenly, it's become an artifact. It's not just a thought, or just, it's not ephemeral anymore. It's become concrete in some way.
No, Howard, you're my hero because I wish I would. I rely on, writing please, PLZ, and I used to always do THX. And somebody wrote THX, that's like George Lucas's first film. What are you talking about? And, instead of writing the word thanks, I put THX. So I appreciate someone who takes the time to do that, because going back to someone we respect, Marshall McLuhan, one of the greatest McLuhan books is The Letters of Marshall McLuhan.
Yes.
And you can see how he did exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
He took the time to compose a letter to Duke Ellington, who's hot
Absolutely.
right now. He just got written up in the LA
Oh
Times,
yeah.
in the Wall Street Journal. And I mean, it's like, dude, this guy was like a friend of McLuhan's,
Sure. Yeah.
he's all over the place. So, onward and upward, can humans think without language?
Oh, I think we'd be pretty hard pressed.
Yeah.
That's yeah. I mean, that's like, hmm. Again, it's a way of the language and the alphabet that we're used to, and so on. It gives form to those thoughts. I mean, I guess we can have thoughts, but they're so ephemeral, and would disappear. There's nothing to, you know settle them down, and grow them, if you will, if
What
without
was the
without
last word?
language. Nothing to settle them down and to grow them, if like,
Grow them, to
yeah,
nourish them. Yeah,
that's
I was
right.
going to say to
Yeah,
manifest. Yeah, that was
yeah.
good. But Chomsky says an interesting thing. He says a language is not just words, it's culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is.
Mm,
What do you do when language breaks down? When
yeah.
language doesn't work, what do you do, Howard?
Wow. I'll take a step back and reflect, and in terms of a relationship with someone, yes, language is limited,
Yeah.
and can be, um very, sometimes there are no words. Sometimes, and that's where I was getting at earlier with the face to face thing. You can say so much without saying anything, with
You mean
your,
with like eye contact, your
exactly, body language,
body language? Yeah.
exactly, yeah, just
Yeah.
by your presence. Yeah, words can fail,
Yep,
definitely.
and but what do you do when they fail?
When they fail, like I
Yep.
say, I would say take a step back.
Yeah, you said that.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, your observation is of humans. I know it's both and it depends, but your inkling, your guess, are humans more feeling beings or more thinking beings?
Wow. Humans are incredibly complex bundles of contradictions and paradox. I think if you go one way or the other, you miss it. You know, we're all of that and more.
Yeah. That's good because you know what Deepak Chopra said, an amazing quote. A person's identity is a socially induced hallucination. There's no such thing as a person. There's only a bundle of consciousness that's
Mm,
constantly in flux.
Yes.
I like that. I
Yeah.
like said too. So here's two questions from Alan Turing. 1950. Is thinking a function of the soul?
Hmm. Yeah, I would say so because out of thinking comes thoughtfulness and courtesy and looking after other people. And I think fundamentally, for a man of faith, in my case, fundamentally, um, our our God wants to be in relationship with us, and you know we learn that, or we see that, we witness that through Scripture and so on, and that to me, the fundamental thing is drawing in a drawing into the circle of friendship
Yeah.
that is that humanity is meant to be, humanity was created to be with our God. So that's how I look at it anyway.
Beautiful. And the second Turing question is, can machines think?
Oh boy. uh I would say, I mean, we have our course, our science fiction tradition that you know the Sorcerer's Apprentice and so on, that machines of Prometheus Unbound, things become out of control, have a mind of their own, so to speak.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. I think it makes for a nice story. I don't think they can be more thinking, that they can supersede humans. I mean, yeah, you can create a machine that might beat you at chess or something, but still, it's not, you know, I don't know. I'm not saying necessarily that we can't get there someday, that creating a machine that can actually supersede human thinking, but I don't see it at this point.
Very good. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Oh, what if one derives happiness through meaning, though? Eh?
Yeah.
Do both at the same time.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you answered a question with a question, so you win, Howard. That's what this series is all about, inventing new questions. But I got it from Viktor Frankl and
oh
man
yes,
Man's Search for Meaning, and he says,
absolutely.
"Hey, meaning lasts, but happiness doesn't necessarily last."
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
you know, it's a complicated question because most people answer it like you do, that they're so intertwined.
sure. And actually, I mean, that happiness is sort of bandied about because of because of the pursuit of happiness. We were very familiar with. I would, I would, I would say a deeper aspect of that would be joy. You know, and that's maybe where I'm saying pursue it. You don't. Happiness is fleeting, but joy is more permanent or more lasting.
That's
And when you
interesting.
pursue
Joy
a meaning,
lasts.
yeah,
Yeah.
when you pursue meaning, meaning is again going back to what I was talking about earlier, the relationships with others. If you are um, fundamentally opening and disposing yourself to the love of other people, and sharing the love you have with other people, then there is joy.
Yeah. Really well put. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we actually creating it?
Huh. Well, I would say again, as a man of faith, I think we are encountering um, in our concept of, or as Mcluhan would say, percept of God, um, consciousness. We're entering into a greater consciousness, and we're being invited into that, as I said earlier, in relationship, fundamentally of love. Um, so it's there. I would say it's there. Like, we don't create it out of ourselves. We're
Yeah.
created. So the consciousness exists already. Yeah, that's how I would look at
Beautiful. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
it. Huh. Interesting. It leads me to ask why. Here I go. I'm asking a question myself. Why when we have a thought, the light bulb goes on. You know.
Great. Yeah. Like the little iconic
Yeah.
light bulb. Yeah. And then Marshall has that whole thing is there's no message in a light bulb, or he has that whole
Yes.
rap about light bulbs. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, that's fine. Look, at answering a question with the question is fine. And a lot of this stuff will come full circle. There's a poet, Audre Lorde, she said, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools.
Hmm.
Yvonne Rainer responded to her, one of her peers, and said, you can if you expose the tools.
Hmm.
What new tool do you suggest? And just so you understand, I set up some of these questions with cute quotes. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean that you have to utilize the quote or put
Right.
it in the context of the quote.
Okay.
I'm just after, like, what new tool are you inspired by or attracted to? And if you want to apply it in dismantling the master's house, that's fine.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I would say, getting back to I use email a great deal and more than ever to connect with people, because of the circumstances we live in right now with the pandemic and so on. And Teilhard de Chardin, a famous Jesuit paleontologist, talked about the noosphere long before the internet existed and so on. And to me, the internet is a form of is like the noosphere, where we are entering into a greater consciousness as human beings around the world. So that's a tool, that the internet and email and the web, the World Wide Web, and so on. And so that's sort of, I'm still, yeah, I realize, I mean, I've been on the internet for 25 years or longer. So it's not a new thing really, but I'm thinking I'm gaining a greater appreciation for it now that we live in a kind of a world where we'd otherwise be so disconnected. Can you imagine if we didn't have this? I mean, we wouldn't be doing this,
Yeah.
what we are doing right now,
No,
without it. So,
it is so important what you said, because I talk to all these Mcluhan people all the time. Rarely do they drop Chardin's name in the noosphere. And that is such an important thing because it's so prevalent as a metaphor and as a real
it's,
percept,
it's
whatever you
become
want.
real. It's become real. Yeah.
It's become real. It's
Yeah.
like, be careful what you wish for. It might become true. But I've carried that question on to, what new toy do you suggest?
Oh boy. New toy. So as in like a gadget or something.
Well, you put in the term. It's just like I was talking to people about tools, and they says, "Well, I like toys better than tools." I mean, who's to say what's the difference? And I like that you said, well, it's not necessarily new, because someone said, "What new tool do you suggest?" And they said intuition. Well, we know intuition's been around since the beginning of time in a way,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's not so much as just you put it in the context you want, whatever a toy might mean to you,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
are tools the same thing as toys?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Like, toys have an intrinsic pleasure to them, that we want to play with them, if in and of themselves, and they give us joy. If getting back to what we were talking about earlier, tools are for a purpose, and you know, we shape our tools, as Mcluhan said, and they shape us. And so we got to be careful what we wish for. um,
Well,
yeah,
you know where he got that from? We shape our buildings, then they shape us, is
mm,
what Churchill said.
mm,
And then
mm-hmm,
I think one of those guys, Marshall, was influenced by like Carpenter or one of those guys says, "Hey, we shape our tool." Or isn't it Culkin said it? We
yeah,
shape our tools, then they shape us.
yeah,
But it is one of the main mantras of the whole Mcluhan world. It is like it's exactly how you were a letter writer. You knew about writing from the Jesuits, and then how did it shape you when you got into email? That you just wrote letters in proper grammar and form in the email style.
yeah.
So it's like it shaped you. And it's good to hear someone go, I've been on the internet for 25 years. No one says that. It's like hard to think we've been on the internet for 25 years. Like I've been on Zoom for 2 years.
Yeah, yeah, right. And it's funny too, Jerry. Like the internet's been around for over 50 years, actually.
Yeah.
Speaking of tools, it was originally a military application, and,
Hello.
and
In where we first saw Skype or Zoom, what we're doing right now, a lot of us, it came out in 39 at the New York World's
there
Fair.
you
But
go.
most of us saw it in 68 and 2001, A
Yes,
Space Odyssey.
yeah,
That's where we first saw, which is called television
yes,
telephone,
yes, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But it's live TV too. So anyways, you can get back to that. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Hmm. To be quite honest with you, I don't really worry about anything. I think
Good.
um, I'm usually just so tired. I'm looking
That's
forward to
good.
lying down,
That
and
is
and
smart.
and I just have faith. I mean, if I wake up, if I or don't, that's. I
Yeah.
mean, it's been a good ride up to
Yeah.
now, you know,
Beautiful.
and I don't really worry about anything. I mean, because there's I can't change it. Like
Yeah.
if the world ends overnight or what have you, I just don't worry about it.
Cool. So McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, artists are the antenna of the world.
Mm,
They're
mm-hmm,
broadcasting and detecting the
mm-hmm,
hidden psychic effects
mm-hmm.
of our inventions so that we can learn how to cope with what we don't like. So, like there's services and disservices to email. But me
Yes,
and you, we like email. We
sure,
use it. We
yeah.
don't we're so engaged in it. We don't think of the disservices of it. So these hidden psychic effects can be revealed to us through the artist. Marshall, one of his main questions is why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects even though artists, painters, writers, filmmakers are broadcasting them to us?
Well, because they raise questions that are hard to deal with for
Yeah.
people. Um, they we if we they can show us an ugly destination if we're not careful, where we're what we're thinking about, what we're doing, where that would lead, or perhaps where we've been, what damage we've done, and again, getting back to relationships with other people, or relationships with indigenous people, for example, and our relationship with the earth itself. Like those kinds of things are hard to deal with, and people would rather be happy.
Yeah.
you know and so the hence the tendency to not appreciate what the art is maybe trying to tell us.
Do artists have a moral obligation?
No, I would say that just happens. I mean, they create something that they like themselves, and if it happens to resonate, great. If it doesn't, who cares? Like, they don't care, and they just do it because they have to. It's like a moral imperative for them to create something. And I feel that even in my emails sometimes. I feel, oh, I just have to write this, I have to get it out of me. Like it's almost like you're being used as an instrument by a muse or something that needs to be expressed, and you're just the instrument for that muse, and that needs to get out there somehow. And God help you if you try to resist it.
Yeah. Well, you're anticipating a lot we're going to talk about. I appreciate that. Howard, are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Um, I would say that I'm not afraid of ideas. I mean, ideas are just ideas, and um, yeah, I mean, they can lead to horrible things. They can also lead to great things. So the question, it becomes a question of examining what those ideas are,
Yeah.
and then just you know making a judgment at that point. But I mean, I'm not. I just say one is afraid at the outset. No, no.
Yeah. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Well, it's funny. There was some. I don't think it's a memory as such, but I know I have this. I'm not sure if it's a memory pre birth, but I really have I really love jazz. I really love the music that was popular, not so much the rock and roll, but more the cool jazz type of music of the late 50s, early 60s when I was born. And I remember my dad telling me, or my mom telling me actually, when my he took out her while she was very pregnant with me to a local nightclub, and she to have supper, and I presume there was music and so on, and even dancing, and she passed out, but because she couldn't say no, or what, I don't know what it was, but I have a feeling I absorb, there is something about sound through the womb,
Oh,
and I have like this just inexplicable. I love like I don't consider myself a dancer, but I love moving to the music of that era, like the some kind of blue, those kinds of things. And I have a feeling, so it's not exactly, maybe it's a body memory. It's coming through the womb. So I don't think you can get much earlier than that there, Jerry.
that's pretty that's pretty dang good. That reminds me of Captain Beefheart. He said he didn't want to come out of the womb. He wanted to stay in there and have womb service.
Right.
Is memory, well, Howard, is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Oh, well, there's something to be said for being living in the moment. In other words, where really don't have a memory. And I've learned that from my father-in-law. I've learned I'm who who died in 2007, and Mike was his name, and Mike Juice, and he you could only talk to him in terms of like in the moment, because he didn't really remember the past, and he had no concept of the future. So it was very instructive to me, and um living in the moment is
Yeah,
so
living
important.
in the moment's a high aspiration. It's like Ram Dass said, "Be here now." But
Yeah.
really, the hidden ground of Mcluhan and Joyce was Wyndham Lewis, who said, "Artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future." That is, it sounds a bunch of gobbledygook, but it really
No.
is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what we're doing. We're living here now. So
Yeah.
tell me someone, you talked about him, but tell me someone, it could be him, within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family who had an impact on you. Just briefly, what was specifically that impact?
Well, I can't help it, my dad.
What'd you get from your dad mainly?
Well, besides life, of course, from half. But I would say, and he and I are very different personalities. I mean, he was a type A personality. He's no longer in his dotage. He and he's on paroxetine, which is an antidepressant. And my brother and I have brothers and I, we kind of joke, if only he took that 50 years ago. But anyway, uh, he was type A, and he was an entrepreneur. He was a business person, very astute. Um, I think I absorbed something from him because in my retirement, I've gotten into business, which I never thought I would do. I'm also like I'm a retired library technician, but I'm also now a bookseller. So if you need any books about coins or stamps, I'm your man.
There you go. What a plug. No book. So and that was good. So outside your immediate family,
Yes.
tell me someone who was a role model who had an impact on you, and what specifically was that impact?
Well, I mean, hey, Marshall McLuhan, and
Well,
and
when did you encounter him? I mean,
well,
did you,
I grew up, of course. I was a child of the '60s, so I think his he was during his heyday. What you do in Marsh McLuhan, Laughing. I watched Laughing as a kid, um, and he was interviewed and so on. I remember a little bit of some of that, but I think more importantly, later in life, my wife, she actually, wife Esther, went for a birthday just for the heck of it, for a birthday present, gave me this book, Essential McLuhan.
oh, that's a great book.
Yeah, in 1998. Okay.
That's when you really started, 1998.
Well, that's that. Okay, that's when it's sort of in my adult life became reacquainted, you might
Yeah.
say, and then in 2003, kind of thanks to that first book, with a gift from Esther's mother, Margaret, late Margaret, I bought this book at my local McNally Robinson, Marsh McLuhan, Understanding Me.
Oh, that is a great book too.
Yeah, this is an anthology of his some of speeches and essays from 1959 to 1979. And there was an account in that book toward the end where it talked about where if you wanted to meet with Marshall McLuhan, you needed to work around his daily attendance at Mass at 12 p.m. at St. Basil's, on the campus of St. Mike's College at U of T. And that kind of made me sit up and notice. I thought, because I only knew up to that point of Marsh McLuhan as this public intellectual who, he said some clever things and what have you, but I never really paid a whole lot of attention until I saw that, and I said, oh, wait a minute, he's not your ordinary, run of the mill public intellectual. I mean, this man, I want to learn from him, and that's where it started. And we founded the Mcluhan Initiative. Like, and I learned that he was raised in Winnipeg, my hometown. He spent, in fact, where he lived at 507 Gertrude is arguably the longest place where he ever lived at one time. If you take a look at all of the addresses he lived through in his life, that would be either, if it's not the first, it's the second longest time that he lived anywhere was on 507 Gertrude.
From what age to what age approximately?
He would have been there from about age 8 or 9, maybe 10, till he left Winnipeg to go to Cambridge in 1934. So that he would have been 23.
8 to 23.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
pretty long.
yeah.
Well,
So
we're gonna
sorry.
yeah,
Go ahead.
no, we're gonna get into Mcluhan more, but
Yeah,
since we're going into this little part about faith, and let's do these first, and we'll
sure.
jump back to Marshall. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Yeah, well, my mother was a Catholic and my dad was Lutheran, and she converted to Lutheranism, and I was baptized and confirmed Lutheran. And then I went to Jesuit high school and college, and as a result of that, I got involved with a movement called the Christian Life Community, which is a movement of a lay movement within the Catholic Church of people who follow Ignatian spirituality, like the spiritual exercise of Saint Ignatius of Loyola. And it's actually ecumenical in practice. I mean, it's Catholic on paper, but yeah. And then I married my lovely wife Esther Juice in 1992, and I was thankfully exposed to Orthodox Christianity, and for many years attended. We would alternate. We had an ecumenical hearth or household, and we would alternate at each other's worship. And I still use or all of the prayers from all of the three traditions. So I have a trinity of traditions when it comes to faith for myself.
If God exists, what do you want God to say to you after you die?
Ah, well done, good and faithful servant.
Beautiful. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I would tend to say the latter. We're all created good, fundamentally, and through bad decisions, all poor circumstances, you name it, people can do awful things, heinous crime, and commit heinous crimes, of course. But I think fundamentally, I mean, even this is what I learned through Orthodox Christianity. Even Satan can be converted.
Yeah. I hear forgiveness is the key. How do you navigate forgiveness? Talk about that. What is forgiveness and how do you navigate it?
Wow. Well, but for the grace of God, here's my stock answer. But yeah, but for the grace of God go I. I attempt to put myself in the shoes of another. When someone has trespassed against me, I mean, it's can be extremely difficult to in the moment to accept that, but I attempt to do that. And how would I feel toward this person, if it was reversed? And so that kind of prepares the ground, if you will, for me to forgive. I mean, I don't buy forgive and forget. It doesn't mean that I think we become more better people by, like a tree, in nature, for example. You'll notice as a tree grows and it becomes very ancient, sometimes it has like a what would you call that, where it grows, there's like some kind of a trespass that has been committed against it in its life.
Yeah.
Some insect or other life form tried to invade it and do
Yeah.
damage, and it grows around it.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of a thing. It doesn't, like, I don't believe in eliminating the hurt. I think that's it's facing it and growing around it, and growing from it.
Yeah.
That's another thing about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Throughout if you consider the Judeo-Christian scriptures, God is constantly bringing good out of bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Marshall turning a breakdown into a breakthrough almost. Like how
Yeah.
do you turn a
Yeah.
break? But Rob's going to interject here. We're going to go into enemy too. But Rob, you got something you want to say there? We welcome you. Thanks, Rob.
Hello
Thank
again,
you.
Rob.
Awesome conversation. So a few quick questions kind of popped up for me. So thank you
Sure.
for jump on. So this morning, I was running around. I was late. I have a 2-year-old daughter, a dog, and got to get them all ready. And then I took my dog out while my daughter was watching her show. And you look at the time, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm always behind on the hamster wheel. And I go to grab my tea, and when I grab my tea, sploosh, like everywhere, mess. And I rage came out in me. And of course, when I recount the story, it sounds so silly, but rage, human rage, and a powerful emotion that is quite terrifying, especially when you realize, there's your daughter and she's watching TV and you're like, oh, what have I done? So 3 questions from this.
Okay.
How do you forgive yourself?
Well, yeah, I mean, the premise or the implication there is that's the hardest person to forgive.
Yes.
And it's an ongoing, like an iterative process that hopefully will be, as you experience each time that's needed to do that, it becomes a little bit more, you're a little bit easier on yourself each time. It comes with, I think, that experience of being upset with yourself and being, and how could I have done that, and how stupid or whatever, blaming yourself, And my wife, points out to me I can be very hard on myself, and she gets upset because we believe in, and we had an Orthodox marriage in the Orthodox Church, actually, or Christian Orthodox Christian Church, and in that we believe we become one. We really become one flesh, and so when I hate myself, I hate her, and that's not on, so it kind of puts me back on my heels and say, okay, I have to look at this again. So yeah, no, there's no silver bullet. There's no easy answer, panacea to it. It's just I think it's just a reiterative process of being a little bit easier on yourself each time, and that's how I would handle that. Yeah.
Next one for you is what do you do about anger and rage? These things that it's almost like, where did that come from? Like, what do we do with rage?
Well, I think it comes from, I think what helps is talking out the stuff. I've had therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. I've been, shown that I have a proclivity to OCD and so on. And so talking things out, it can be a great help to do that, into addressing or recognizing, because usually the rage is often something that's been pent up, and not addressed. So I guess being honest with oneself and saying, oh yeah, like this is really making me angry, and saying it to somebody else, this situation, I'm feeling really, no, just, and this is a guy thing, I think, a male foible is not to be too ready to express one's feelings.
Yes,
yes, and so
mismanaged stoicism.
Yeah, and I've learned, in my adult life, thanks to, again, to a great deal to my wife, to who's a woman, of course, that she has taught me how important it is to express my feelings about something. And there was one point, and not that long ago, maybe 20 years ago. I'm now 60. When I was in my late 30s, early 40s, I still couldn't, like, somebody asked me, how do you feel about that? And I didn't know. And it was a case of getting in touch. It sounds a bit hokey, but getting in touch with one's feelings.
Rob, let me interject before your third. These are great, because down the line, I was going to ask him, no, my question morphed. It used to be, can anger be a productive emotion? And they simply could say, yes or no. They didn't really have to expound on it.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife's dad lives in Canada for many years. He was a social worker,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked with him some of these questions. I said, "Can any of these questions be worded better?"
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "That question you could say, anger can be a productive emotion when."
Mm-hmm.
So that made them get a little more involved in the question rather than saying yes or no.
Right.
Twice since I changed it over the last 5 years, doing this 40 years, twice people have gone, I go, anger can be a productive emotion when fill in the blank. They go, anger can't be a productive emotion. They literally flipped it back to the old way. But
Ah,
most people, because I word it,
yeah.
they go, they try to say something productive. So go ahead.
But
Rob.
that's only 2 people out of how many that kind of,
Yeah.
because you think about it, it's called anger management, not
Mm.
anger removal, right? It's
Mhm.
about,
Yeah.
and anger is such a, it's biblical in and of itself, right?
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
and rage, and we see these images, and
Yes.
there's a special guest Conan behind us. And I always think of the prodigal son. I think Rembrandt has a painting, The Prodigal Son,
Ah.
I believe.
Okay.
And it's the man is on his knees, his head is shaved, and his father is showing him unconditional love.
Yes.
It
Yes.
is it's the relationship that God is with us.
Yes.
And though we represent the prodigal son, he always loves us.
Mm.
And
It's interesting. I'm really glad you brought that story up, Rob, because I've lately, when I think about that particular story, the prodigal son, I identify more with the brother,
yes,
who's been
who's
so
always been there.
faithful
Mm-hmm.
to his father, and then here comes this upstart son,
Yeah,
who goes off and spends his inheritance and wastes everything, comes back, and as if nothing has happened, and his father's, oh, here you are. And the brother, is resentful because he knew, he gets the fatted calf, and everything is for him, and the faithful brother is there fuming. He doesn't even get a goat to have with his friends, as the passage goes. So I sort of relate to that, to him, and to his resentment and anger, and so what does that say about me?
Yeah.
Because I have a younger brother who was adopted, Paul. And I remember as a child, he's 4 years younger, a little over 4 years younger than I am. And we got him, he was born in February. We got him in May of the year he was born. And so I was the apple of my dad's and mom's eye, or my dad's eye in particular. I was the center of attention. I got what I was spoiled brat. Let me, just put it bluntly. And then all of a sudden, Paul comes along, and that whole thing shifted. I remember this as a little kid, and say, "Wow, what happened? Where I'm no longer the star of the show. Hey, here I'm here. And so that's where I'm coming from. I have that, So I need that. I have a need to be mindful of my own history, if you like, and familial history, how that worked, and to sort of, okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm with my dad. I'm helping my dad because I want to, and for nothing else, for its intrinsic value of being with him as long as possible, and not worrying about who gets what and who gets more attention and all this stuff. So that's where I sort of, worked it out.
Caregiving. So it's so good that you're able to express to us what caregiving is about. Okay, Rob, number 3. What was your third question?
Well, it's just very briefly, but I think in that prodigal son story, the father does say something to that brother, and it's something along the line. I don't know that well, but I seem to recall that the father does say something, and it
Yes.
answers that question, because
Yes.
we all struggle with this. Like, I've been a rule follower all this time, and my cleaned up heroin addicted brother or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
now
Yeah.
they're getting all this attention, and
Yeah.
now I'm in the shadow. Should I just be, should I have a fall from grace
Yeah.
just to recover?
Yeah.
We wrestle with these things. And
Yeah.
the last question is completely unrelated, but I noticed that when you were talking, you were kind of explaining the relationship piece with God, with religion, spirituality, and it resembles almost like Hasidic Judaism, and how when they're reading they do that, and even in your appearance you speak of the three relationships. I mean, we know that Jesus was Jewish,
Yes. Yes.
and that's why really we must understand Jewish Orthodox custom to better understand the relationship that Jesus had.
Yes.
Anyways, that's just me spouting off my random thoughts. Where I'm going with this is, do you have a mantra or a verse of the Bible that you connect with, that you tap into when you're meditating?
Yes. It's called a Jesus prayer,
Hmm.
and it goes like this: Jesus, my Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy upon me, a sinner. And there's a discipline in Orthodox Christianity called hesychasm, and what it is, it's a breathing exercise. So as you inhale, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy upon me, a sinner. So and exhale. So you do that. And it becomes part of you. It's like it becomes, you don't think about it anymore. It's just a way of being. Yeah.
Reflexive, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much.
Wow, that was good, Rob. That's like yoga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yoga is all about breathing.
What? Sorry. Lastly, what was the name of that practice?
The Jesus prayer, and then hesychasm,
How do you spell
HESYCHASM. It's a discipline. Yeah, prayer discipline.
Thank you for all the wisdom. I've Googled about 5 words since you guys have started, including
Yeah.
Noah's.
Excellent.
Noosphere. That
I
you got
didn't even say it right.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
Rob's in the noosphere. He's been in the noosphere since he started this.
Yeah, I can't get it.
And it's interesting, Rob, if I may just say this for the record there, you asked about, I give an appearance of being Hasidic, and it's interesting. I've been mistaken for being Jewish,
Yes.
and even my name, Howard Engel. The only other
Yeah.
Howard Engel I knew was Jewish. In fact,
Yeah.
actually, there's 2 of them I knew that were both Jewish, and one of them was a famous Canadian writer, or semi-famous, Howard Engel, of the Benny Cooperman spy novel series and so on up in Canada. Anyway, Marion Engel, who maybe has become more famous, was his wife. Anyway, I have a theory. You've heard that Karl Marx converted to Christianity for social mobility in 18 or 19th century Germany or Prussia. I have a theory that there may be in my family's history. I can't prove it yet. I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some of that in my own family, where they became. Actually, we weren't Lutheran in the old country. We're actually ethnic Germans from Russia. There were like a couple million people in the from 17 during the reign of Catherine the Great, from 1762 to 1796. Emigrated, and she was a German herself, but she Russified herself, and she became extremely popular with the Russian people. She became Orthodox Christian, and at that time there was huge frontiers in Russia that needed so-called development and so on. So and the German states, Germany did not exist as we know it today at that time. There were German states, and they were very crowded, but they had a lot of, their technology was up there and so on. So she negotiated with the various principalities and powers at that time to bring, I think the final tally was about 2 million people altogether from those areas to Russia, various parts of Russia. In my case, my family's paternal side was the Volga region near Saratov, and south of the, north of the Caspian Sea, and that's where the Volga empties. So people, there were people that from all across society, all religions and no religion, and you name it. And they created these little villages. They were given German speaking mostly, because they were given all their rights as they could keep their language. They could raise their kids in their own schools. They didn't have to serve in the Russian army, and so they had and they would be protected from invading Tartars and so on at that time. And by a century later, toward the end of the 19th century, all those things had fallen by the wayside, and the country was just falling apart. Like Tsar Alexander III, I think, was assassinated, in fact, in the 1880s, if I'm not mistaken, and so on. And there were, before the Russian Revolution, there was the revolution in 1905 in Lenin in St. Petersburg and what have you. There was an uprising and so on. The country was there's a lot of unrest, and so my ancestors saw the writing on the wall, and that's what drew them. Like, they get this so-called free land, sections of farmland in Canada. So that's why on my paternal side, they moved to Canada. But it was interesting that where they were in Russia, another Jesuit connection there, the Jesuit order was suppressed in 1773 because they've got too cozy with the various powers that they were serving, in Portugal and Spain and so on. And the Pope suppressed them, so they couldn't carry on their activities, except Catherine the Great in Russia said, "Oh, no, you're not touching our Jesuits. They can continue." So they were able to continue their work, including in those villages, where my people were and so on. That was from 1773 to 1814, when they were unsuppressed again, the Jesuit order. But so there's some interesting connections there that I've been contemplating in my family's history, which kind of comes full circle. Well, I've been so influenced by Jesuits. I have this, people think I'm Jewish, so there you go. Yeah, just some thoughts I thought I'd share with you.
And the Jesuits are so amazing because of the records that they kept, and
yes,
how
exactly
intellectual they were. Like, they would have conversations with the indigenous peoples of Canada nowadays.
Absolutely. Jesuit relations. They wrote back to
that book tells us, like, it almost makes us have to rewrite the history of today.
Indeed.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's where Hobbes got his idea of the noble savage, right? But he was kind of manipulating it to his own, vision. Anyways, that was awesome. And where I live, there's a group, there's Hutterites and Doukhobors, and they were Russians.
Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Surrey, but where I go hunting is a place called Castlegar.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of Doukhobors out there.
Oh, you're in BC. You're in BC. Oh, yeah. I see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure. I thought you were in California, like Jerry, but not.
Well, the shirt gives it away. But,
right.
And the Maui poster in the back. But hey, that was awesome, man. Thank you so much, Jerry. Welcome. You have it for the rest of the way, brother. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't hesitate to join back in. And then if we brought Clinton in, he's in Ottawa with the truckers. Well, not with them, but he's walking around taking movies of them.
Yeah, right.
So we're Global Theater, Global Village. But this is a good background to this. And you sort of covered it, Howard, in a way, but I'm going to ask it anyways.
Sure.
How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I set it up with a few modern thinkers' thoughts. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Chinese proverb goes, he who cannot agree with their enemy is controlled by them. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first,
Yes.
how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I'm wondering if what he's getting at there is we're better off to ignore them, and thereby not, not if by not giving somebody the time of day, you sort of you don't give them that satisfaction or opportunity to get back at you. But I would there's a far better way I would focus attention on, and it may be a stock answer because it's easy to say and it's extremely difficult to practice, and it's probably one of the most unique aspects of Christianity, and that is love your enemies.
Yeah.
Is
hating more innate or more invented?
Well, since the fall, it's where Cain and Abel were brothers who fought and one died. I think it's a choice. I don't think it's necessarily. I wouldn't give the excuse, oh, it's not only, like people will say, I'm only human, I'm only this or that. And really, you're fallen human, and the real human, like the one created by God, created good by God, will not hate. And so it's a matter of getting back to that. How do we get back to that? Loving your enemy, where there's no seeing yourself in the other person. And yeah.
Well, is competition more innate or more invented? And I set this one up with, if you see the movie Grapes of Wrath, based on the great book,
right?
The guy comes to the farmland in his car and he says, Joe, you got to move out of here because we're putting a road through here. So just move on. And, he knows him from local.
Sure.
And he says, he's standing there with his gun. And he goes, my grandfather farmed this land. My father farmed this land. I farmed this land. We own this land. Who do I shoot? Because he doesn't want to shoot the guy who's telling him, but he does want to shoot someone.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not so much competition. It's the word was wrong. I didn't mean competition. Is blaming. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Okay.
Is blaming more innate or more invented? So humans need to blame. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, we go back to Adam and Eve. Adam, blaming Eve, blaming the serpent for the disobedience. I think that comes about by not facing the reality of a situation, where it really, we despise in others what we loathe in ourselves, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And when we face that whole, then progress can be made, I think. So it's the blame game is not helpful. So it's not I would say it's I would say it's yeah, I would say it's not innate to
it's more invented by humans.
I would say so, yeah. As a cop out.
That's good what you said. I appreciate that, because you're enabling me to utilize some of these other questions that I usually don't ask people, but this is one I always ask people, and it's funny because it fits in right now.
Okay.
There's a saying that goes, you create what you resist. So what you just said reminded me of when somebody goes, "You're stingy," and they're pointing at you, and they're really pointing at themselves, and they're going, "I know I'm stingy, but I don't want to admit it, so I'm going to lay it on you."
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and so
Or as the saying goes, when you point a finger at someone, there's 4 pointing back at you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so you create what you resist. And then the comedian Bob Goldthwait morphed it into you are what you hate.
Mm.
And then James Joyce said, isn't it a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion with which you say you disbelieve?
Mm.
And then Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist. So how do you reckon with this term, this thought, you create what you resist? I'm not saying you, Howard,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
one creates what one resists.
You know, it reminds me of the tetrad of, you know, and the laws of media, you know, the flipping into its opposite,
Yeah.
you know, something that uh, that was intended for something, like it was created for something else, and it becomes it the exact opposite of what it was intended to
Yeah, I'll
create.
give you a good example.
Yeah.
So people listening know. If you take a car, you flip it to an extreme, the fourth step of the tetrad, what does it reverse into? What does it flip into when pressed to an extreme? A car flips into a traffic jam, the
Yes.
opposite of what you want a car to do.
Exactly.
But it also flips into a house, a home.
Yes.
People can live in a car.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you get both ends of the spectrum,
Sure.
or it flips into what? A car bomb. People use cars to kill other
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
So
Or also what Mcluhan said, the carapace, where
yeah,
if you didn't know anything about the Earth, you were some you know, alien looking on the Earth, and you saw all the activity, and you'd see, of course, all the vehicles moving around, and occasionally you'd see something coming out of the vehicle. You know, they would interpret that as, well, the Earth consists of, it's populated by these rigid structures, and occasionally, you know, there's a soft bodied thing that comes out of them, but more, you know, mostly they're these hard bodied, like insects. You know,
yeah,
the car, what Mcluhan called the carapace, like you're enveloped in this
yeah.
a metal cocoon.
Cocoon.
Yeah.
Yes, totally. Cocoon. Well, it begs to continue on with this question I hardly ever ask too, because the question is, does punishment work? So if someone does you wrong, your
Hmm.
enemy,
Hmm.
or whatever you want to call them, you're going to love them, love your enemy as yourself.
Hmm.
But does punishment work? I mean, if they come up and kick you in the leg and harm you and rob your house, and you call the cops and they take them away, and then do you press charges, go, oh, I'll just forgive them, but they destroyed your house or whatever,
Yeah.
you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
Our society has propagated this punishment thing,
Yeah.
and so I've just set it up with this, like when a criminal gets caught, do they go, oh, I did something morally or socially wrong?
Hmm.
Or they could go, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day. I got caught.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because and
Yeah.
then you go into a Robin Hood,
Yeah.
steal from the rich and give to the
Sure.
poor.
Sure.
So how do
Yeah.
you suss that one out,
Well,
Howard?
that's interesting. Yeah, I would say it's a fool's errand, or it's a win situation, because that's really what you come up against is punishment. It's like the cost of doing the bad business and so on. I think what is more, what nips it in the bud, the activity that you don't want, is if you give incentive to what you do want rather than disincentive to what you don't want, I think that you go further. And for example, in Canada, I don't know if this is true also in the States, but with the there is a whole like new approach to there's in terms of when people are break the law and so on, and they're there's a name for it and I'm just escaping me. Is it called retribution?
Or
Where rather than
like reforming or
yeah,
giving them a chance to
yeah,
work it out rather than punish.
exactly.
Yeah,
Like they again, and what the beauty of it there, Jerry, what I really like about it, and it's actually a very indigenous approach to thing, and I think that's where it started, is with the indigenous community, where people are given an in a circle, and they're shown what actually their whatever they did, how it affected somebody, and then they're given an opportunity to make amends
yeah,
themselves, though it comes from them. It's not imposed from outside.
yeah,
Yeah. And it's a huge, and again, it's the relationship thing.
yeah,
You by doing this, you've damaged a relationship, and this is what it's caused, and you may not even realize it, but by doing this particular thing, you created a huge problem over here you didn't even realize, and sort of showing to the person like how we're all connected, and how doing one wrong thing can reverberate through a community, and then at the end of that saying, okay, how do you wish how to respond to that, and then giving them an opportunity, and more often than not there are ways of making amends that really work. So it's no longer a case of crime and punishment. It's more a uh, uh, a breach of trust, or a bad decision that's reverberated through the community, and how a good condition, a good decision, a new, can make amends and make it better.
yeah.
So yeah.
It's back to Mcluhan. Turn a breakdown into a breakthrough. Turn
Hmm.
a rejection into a redirection.
Hmm.
Turn a weakness into a strength.
That's right.
So here's the follow up too. That's interesting because Gregory Bateson came up with the double bind, and he said, "Pay no attention that I'm lying to you." So, like, you're a little kid, and your parents go, "If you're good, Santa Claus will bring you a gift," and you're like, "There's no Santa Claus," but you go along with it. Okay, I'll be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're legitimately lying to your parents. You're not like, well, it's like whatever you want to call it, a white lie.
Yeah.
And even Marcel Duchamp and Alan Watts use the double bind in Zen Buddhism as a therapeutic tool. And my question to you is from Marcel Proust, his questionnaire: on what occasion do you lie?
Well, it would be to again, I guess maybe this is a bit of a stock answer, but to protect somebody, to um, um, not hurt them. Like, yeah, you can be brutally honest, but to what end? What does that achieve? Um, you know, uh, it's a matter of discerning whether somebody really wants to hear what you think, or don't tell me if you don't like it kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it comes back to a question of discerning really what's required in the situation, I think. So yeah, there's definitely occasion. I mean, look at the, if you're hiding the a Jewish family in during
Yeah.
the Holocaust,
Yeah.
and somebody comes, are you do you know where these people are? And you say, oh no,
Oh,
yeah, oh no, you know, that kind of thing.
yeah. What's more important, Howard, conviction or compromise?
Well, being Canadian, I would say compromise.
Wow. Why is it that Canadian?
Well, it's, we have a reputation of being, of giving and taking, in order to survive. And yeah, so that's actually kind of an easy one for me.
No, that's beautiful. I always fish for that answer, and 90% of people say conviction.
Oh yeah.
So there's no right or wrong answer
No,
standing
no.
to these questions, but that one you got right, Howard. Thank you.
Okay.
T.S. Eliot said, poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in? Or like Marshall said, your interior landscape.
What language? I want to say language of love. I would say,
Nice.
Yeah.
Is perception reality?
For that person, yeah. Yeah.
James
Yeah,
Joyce.
it reminds me of I was just going to say, it reminds me of my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, telling his kids, including my mother, when your mother says, it's white and it's black, it's white. Because she was going through the time, or what they called at that time, the time of life, like menopause. And so just to keep peace in the household. Yeah.
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 James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin over 100 years ago. He ran a movie theater called the Volta Cinema. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?
Mm-hmm.
Faulkner said years later, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
I think the play, or the play's the thing, I think that concentrates life. It's it sort of, life can be pretty. There's no script. There's no end. There is an end, I guess, but when you die, but it's just sort of amorphous. Whereas the play kind of concentrates what we learn about life, and art does that. It sort of encapsulates the truths that are there, but it takes a different medium to perceive it somehow. Like, because it's like being a fish out of water. We don't perceive it until we're out of the water, and that's when we see the play, or we observe a masterpiece, and some, whatever that discipline might be. It's like being in a way a fish out of water, and that's when we notice it.
Yeah. Can you forget to die?
Forget to die. Well, I'm just thinking, we didn't choose to be born. That was not a decision. So it just, it's not a case of, forgetting to die is not a case of denying one's mortality. I think it's a case of living life in such a way that those barriers become, it's a part of life, dying becomes part of life, and you kind of get absorbed back. Well, we talked about that earlier, into the consciousness, of everything else. So it's yeah, I guess the short answer is yes.
Good. No, it's definitely a trick question, but I love it. You know, in back to art, you said some good things about that, and remind me of a couple film people I love. Their mantras: "Ignore yourself," and Jonas Mekas says there is no self-expression, and
Mm,
great jazz pianist Cecil Taylor says I'm just a vehicle, and this
mm,
stuff comes through me.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Is art making more self-expression? I know it's both and it depends and all that, but is it more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever dominant technology or culture is currently present?
I think it's an imperative. There's something about art making and creativity that's compelling, and you can't, if you choose to be alive, you can't help but not do that.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it's a form of denying. It's a form of, well, you talked, it's a form of not living life fully. There's a becomes a a blockage there.
yeah. It's McLuhan's great line. The Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
can art making be egoless?
Egoless.
Yeah, egoless
Oh,
without.
egoless.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know what? I think so, because again, like the self-expression thing, it's more a case of, there's something about the creative process, and that you have almost, it's like a vocation, or a sense of responsibility, that this needs to be done
yeah.
for the sake of everybody else. It's not really it's not about self-aggrandizement, or um, making, make yourself like a center of attention or anything. It's more a case of you've been given this responsibility to share through your, yeah, yes, I mean, it's through your prism and your lenses, and your every, you're the filter, but needs to be out there. Yeah.
Lewis Carroll said, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Huh. Impossible things. Yeah, I think one is um, coming. It seems impossible. I know it really isn't. Intellectually, I know it isn't, but it feels kind of impossible, and that would be coming out on the other side of the pandemic. You know,
Yeah.
because things have changed so much. It's not just a temporary
Yeah.
blip that we go back to what we were. It's fundamentally flipped everything on its head. I have a way of saying, I hope, in my email, again, getting back to my email, I trust this note finds you keeping well and in good spirits in spite of the topsy-turvy world, underline topsy-turvy in this context, due to the coronavirus pandemic that persists in our midst.
Yeah.
And, it's going to continue persisting, whether we like it or not. And it's a case, in terms of creativity, how do we get to a point where we just live with it?
Yep.
But it's fundamentally changed everything, in my
Yeah.
view. You know.
Dude, it's helped my interview series completely and all my events. I mean,
Mhm.
people hate to hear this, but my events are better. I've been doing this for 40 years,
Wow.
gathering people in a room and talking.
Right.
And they're way better And I'm sorry, and people don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
And a lot of us older people like, you mean I don't have to go park and walk up steps and all this stuff? I just can do it in my
Yeah.
bedroom.
This is
It,
amazing. Yeah.
it is quite amazing. And then
It
all
is.
these people, yeah, how could I have ever interviewed you? Oh, we can meet at the MEA conference, and then it's too busy there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like amazing. So
Yeah. No, I agree. I hear
and
you. Yeah.
that leads perfectly into Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says
Mhm.
it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength
Hmm.
rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness,
Right.
which is Mcluhan's how do you turn a breakdown into a breakthrough?
Yeah.
Howard, tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Well, I would say, there is this characteristic of OCD I was referring to earlier called hyper focus, where you become so absorbed in what you're doing, you forget about everything else. Even you forget to eat. We don't forget to eat, but you just put it off.
Yeah.
And, I'm putting off sleep, putting off this or that. But you can accomplish some pretty neat stuff in the
Yeah.
meantime. And you know what? If you choose to break it at the wrong time, you can't come back to it.
Yeah.
Like you can't recreate that flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. So, Howard, I asked for 90 minutes. We got about 4 more minutes. Can you go a little longer?
Sure.
Okay. How do you find peace of mind?
Well, I have as I may have intimated earlier, I do have a prayer practice that kind of centers me, and ideally, it's giving my God the first fruits of every day. That's the first thing I do in the day is pray, and pray for for especially thinking about the needs of other people. That would be probably the chief one. And then I do, in terms of physically speaking, I do something I call, it's old school, I realize, calisthenics. When was the last time you heard that?
It's great.
Since I was in high school, I've been doing that.
Yeah.
And that's a great, gives me great peace of mind. Like they say, when you exercise physically, it's like well, you release the natural endorphins and so on, and you're feeling better, but more, not just because you did a few exercises. It's just your whole outlook changes.
Totally. It's
Yeah.
amazing. I'm totally into there. I'm with you all the way.
Yeah.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Keep up with the haggling. And let me tell you where that comes from.
What's haggling mean? What's that word mean?
I'm from North End, Winnipeg, and in Winnipeg, where the W stands for wholesale and G stands for garage sale, there's no good self-respecting Winnipegger goes through life without looking for a good bargain. And it comes from our history as a distribution center. We were at the turn of the last century, we were becoming the Chicago of the North, and all of the railways were coming through here, and warehouses. We have something called the Exchange District that has remained after the Panama Canal. Like Winnipeg was the third largest city in Canada until the mid 20th century, but until 1914, when the Panama Canal was built, we were on track of becoming literally the Chicago of the North. So when the Panama Canal was built, then it reduced the need for all this transportation to come through the city. But in that experience, however, has indelibly, Winnipeg, the wholesale, as in I can get it for you wholesale. And when I was a kid, I was into, my dad gave me his travel change. and I started collecting coins. Okay, and then I kind of looked up coin dealers in the phone book, and I had my little Charlton catalog, like that's like your red book in the States for U.S. coins. Like a Charlton is for the blue book, in Canada is or teal to be exact at that time for Canadian coins, and looking up coins I wanted for my collection and so on. So I go to these dealers and say, I see you have this coin. I'd like to get it from you. What's your best price on it? And so to start haggling on it, eh? So that's what I'm getting at with
I got you. It reminds me of a little of Mr. Haney in Green Acres.
Oh, yes.
Okay, these are 5 quick questions.
Okay.
In a couple words.
Yes.
They're from Alan Watts. First one is, who started it all?
God.
Are we going to make it?
Yes.
Where do we put it?
What did George Carlin say? Oh, in the house. Your stuff. Keep it in your house. That's what I've done. Everything's in my house now.
Yeah, in your house. I worked for George for a half a year. What an amazing human being.
Yeah.
Who's cleaning it up?
Somebody after I'm gone. I'm not worrying about it right now.
Is it serious?
Not really.
Good. Now we're off the Alan Watts. Back to the real questions. Few more here.
Okay.
Which way should toilet paper come off the roll? Over or under?
Actually, it comes off the back of my toilet cabinet because I use old. I'm a Winnipegger, and we're known for being skinflints. So I don't throw my used tissue away. I keep it for wiping my rear end. Right. I don't use toilet paper, actually.
Right. Okay. That's good. If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
A True Winnipigeon.
Nice. They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
The publisher wants to scent the glue in the binding of your book.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Your autobiography. What would the smell be?
Winnipeg in winter.
They want to have a color other than black ink for some of the pages. What color?
Ochre.
If a statue was built in your honor, where would it be displayed and what would it be made of?
Oh, it would be beside Marshall and the Winnipeg Citizens Hall of Fame. It's in Assiniboine Park.
And made of what?
Bronze.
Nice. Howard, tell me something good you never had, but you never want.
Children.
Oh my God, that is such a legitimate answer. They're good, never had it, never wanted. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Lean back.
Good answer. So let's get into Mcluhan for a little in our closing. I think your quotes were just amazing that you said.
Glad you like them.
When you turn this thing on, pointing to the microphone, pointing to the Zoom little green.
Exactly.
dot,
yeah.
It changes everything. That
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think of Western skies as one of the most beautiful things about the West and Western horizon. The Westerner doesn't have a point of view. He has a vast panorama. He has such a tremendous space around him. He has total field of vision. Now, I think Marshall was after comprehensive awareness. You study patterns and you get the big picture. Understanding is not having a point of view. You don't go, I love Zoom or I hate Zoom.
Right.
You try to understand it.
Yeah.
How did studying Marshall shape your behavior? And let's say, you actually gave me the date where you really started, studying Marshall. Let's say when you got Essential Mcluhan in 98.
Yeah.
So, that's whatever, 10, that's like 30 years you've been studying Mcluhan.
Yeah. 24 to be exact.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
24.
Yeah.
So how did this 24 years of studying Mcluhan shape your behavior, and what major element stayed the same and what major element changed?
Well, I've always appreciated Mcluhan's impish sensibility, like, and he, if you look at him, if you look at his pictures, he's always almost at the verge of smirking. And I think he had the right attitude towards life, that he didn't take it too seriously. So I think I've gained that. That was a huge thing I gained. The sense of, like, the playfulness and the sense of humor really spoke to me. He didn't take himself too seriously. Like, I got ideas. If you don't like him, I've got others, that kind of thing. And so that's something that I've really glommed onto. And the thing that hasn't changed is faith. I've always had that, and he's just reinforced it for me.
Yeah.
But in a life supporting way, not in a conviction way, but in a in the compromise type of way.
Beautiful. Because you also quoted a great Mcluhan book, Medium in the Light, Reflections on Religion. What an amazing book.
Yes.
You quoted this, and I'd love for you to suss it out a little. In Jesus Christ, there is no distance or separation between the medium and the message.
Right.
It is one case where we can say that the medium and the message are fully one and the same.
Yeah.
Most people don't get, in my opinion, the medium is the message. They don't realize that it's form and content.
Yeah.
It's like, he's not saying it doesn't matter what's on TV. He means that, of course, it matters. I'm a literature guy. It matters what they're saying.
Sure.
But because we ignore the form, which we just veg out on the couch, like when I asked my niece once, she was watching the stupidest thing in the world. And I goes, why are you watching this? And she goes, because nothing else is on, which, people laugh at. They think that's stupid. There's nothing wrong. She decided in her life to veg out on the couch for an hour. It doesn't matter what's on the TV. It's just on.
That's right.
But I think Marshall emphasized that we don't study the form so much. So he overemphasized. He wasn't saying there's no content. He was saying, hey, wake up and pay attention to the form a little.
Right.
But how would you suss this out? In this case where we say the medium and the message, we are fully, the medium and the message are fully one and the same.
Well, you see the next quote I have there.
What is it?
The medium is the message.
Yeah.
If you notice that the two M's are capitalized.
Okay.
They're capitalized because I'm referring to Christ in both instances.
I see.
So that's the summary of the previous quote, if you might say.
Right.
The medium is the message. So Christ is his own message.
But you talked about something besides faith.
Yes.
So suss that out. What is that? Because people would go, oh, this guy has faith. He believes in this. But you said it's more than faith. What did you say it was?
I'm not sure what you're referring to there.
Suss out. What does faith mean? Trust?
Oh, I see. Okay. It's relationship.
It's a relationship.
Yeah, relationship, and someone who has invited me. I have a relationship with my Lord as someone who has invited me into a circle of friendship.
Yeah. That is great. Relationship is such a key word in studying Mcluhan. People don't realize that. Just a couple more here, Howard. It's sure been enlightening and fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great.
Thornton Wilder, who loved Finnegan's Wake, by the way, he said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. Now, normally this is what I ask. I go,
Okay.
Howard, you've laid your cards out on the table. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this.
Okay.
What is it really all about for you? So it's sort of like trying to get the person to say there's something deeper that it's all about for you. But you pretty much laid this out. Talk about this idea of art, your art form, writing emails, is your desire to tell something and hide it at the same time. Talk about that paradox or that duality.
Yeah, like there's this Saint Francis of Assisi has this wonderful quote, or he's attributed to him anyway. You may be the only gospel your neighbor ever reads. And sometimes you may need words. So, in other words, it's it's not what I say, it's how I act and what I mean, and yes, often, it's like the song, what a wonderful world by Louis Armstrong.
Yes.
They're saying, how do you do? But really what they mean is, I love you.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing in my communication with other people, by taking an interest, by being present, by attempting to be with them, compassion is a way of saying I love you.
Yeah. That is beautiful. You quoted Louis Armstrong to make your point. That is beautiful. One time I asked a guy, I said, who started it all? The Alan Watts questions. He went, Louis Armstrong. I goes, that is a great answer. I like one time a guy goes, my parents.
Blame them.
Yeah, blame them. But I'm curious, you two, who are your other jazz? We'll close out soon, but who are your other jazz heroes? I mean, you mentioned the Cool School guys, but specifically, you mentioned Miles and Louis now.
Yeah.
Who else? Because I'm a big jazz buff.
Well, Dizzy Gillespie, and some of them, like Vince Garibaldi. There's the cool stuff is what I'm into. Yeah.
You know who I asked all these questions? Who's close to that? Horace Silver.
Oh, okay.
Check him out, man. He's definitely Cool School in a way, and he's also new agey, almost pre-new age. His lyrics. He was he's an instrumental pianist, but he did these vocal albums in there they're sort of like cosmic new age before new age was around.
Right. Oh, and another, like, to put in a plug for a Canadian, of course, would be I'm just having a moment here with my
Oscar Peterson.
That's who I'm thinking of. Thank you, Oscar Peterson. And then there's also his first name is escaping me, but Jones is another one, like, in the same school. He's
Philly Joe Jones or Elvin Jones?
No, neither of them. This is also a Canadian. I'm trying to think of his first name. He's also a pianist.
He's a pianist.
I'm trying to think of his name, and I can't think of it at the moment. But his last name is Jones.
You know who you got to check out if you haven't, who lives in Vancouver, is the Cecil Taylor of Canada. He's good. Paul Plymley.
Oh yeah.
He's a
Okay.
big Mcluhan guy too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really cool guy.
Yeah.
Really great jazz pianist.
Nice.
So really been fun.
Yeah.
Last two questions.
Okay.
Howard, what's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Oh, our truth and reconciliation with Indigenous people by far. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're recovering. I mean, we're taking our and to the extent that the white folks are taking their cue from them. There's a renaissance or a naissance. I don't know if you could even say a renaissance. I would say a naissance, at least since contact. It's 500 years of history that they've never had. They've never had a chance to shine, and now
Wow.
they're beginning to. So that's a huge one for me. Yeah.
Beautiful. Howard, what gives you the most optimism?
Well, just that. I think what I just said, like the fact that in spite of our basically attempt to destroy, either willfully or inadvertently, whole cultures, indigenous cultures and languages, and again, since contact, that in spite of that, and here's the rub. We deserve what we gave them, and they're coming around and they want to be our friend.
Yeah. Goes back to that forgiveness thing. You mean
Yeah.
they're willing to forgive, so we should learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you did so good. We got a bonus. If Marshall McLuhan showed up here, what's the question you could ask him? One question.
Okay. Wow, that's a neat one. What would your advice be for Justin Trudeau?
That is real down to earth, because we know Pierre went to Marshall, didn't he, and asked him
Exactly.
help.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, Justin should be emailing Andrew. Hey,
There you go.
do you know this great story? You must, about Andrew. He was a sort of punk rocker, and one day he finished his show, and in the mosh pit on the floor there was a copy of Understanding Media.
No way.
Yes. Is that Marshall called that complex clairvoyance. That is
Yeah.
yeah.
There you go. Wow.
Okay, Howard, let's stay in touch. I don't want this
You bet.
to end, but I'm
bet.
gonna hit the end broadcast button, but that doesn't mean it's gonna end. We gotta
No, I look forward to our ongoing collaborations and engagement there, Jerry. And
we'll do a whole salon where Rob and some other people are here.
Sure. Sounds great. Thank you again. This has been wonderful.
Thank
Right on.
you, Howard. Love you. Hooray.
Love you too.
Hurrah. Hooray. Hurrah.
Hurrah.